Hi, I'm Ernie Conover. Welcome to my shop. I'd like to spend a few minutes today talking about bowl gouge grinds. There's quite a few different patterns out in the marketplace today being touted by various turners, and I'd like to try to demystify this for you a bit. I'd now like to stroll over to the grinder and show you how to grind each of these grinds. This will help you to actually see which grind is best for you. This is a Sorby forged carbon steel bowl gouge that I bought in my youth. It was made sometime in the 1960s, and it is well described in Frank Payne's book of 1957, although he did not call it a bowl gouge, simply a large spindle gouge that was ground in a different way. It was ground to about a 40-degree angle and the same bevel all the way around, with the face being square. Later, most of us learned that by sloping this face back about 15 degrees, you could go inside a bowl a little better, but it's a simple grind that was easy to do. The way we did it at that time was to put a platform rest here and adjust it such that we grind a 40-degree angle on this gouge. And we would simply put that against the gouge and slowly rotate it like that, doing our utmost to keep it absolutely square. It is still a grind that actually works quite well and is very easy to do with minimal grinding equipment. We're going to point it just a little bit uphill, and it's ground to 40 degrees, so that is the angle it will cut at. If you sight that nose angle in the direction you want to cut is parallel up the side of this bowl blank, we're going to put it right in like that. Get it cutting. I've got the nose bevel rubbing now. I'm going to turn it a little until it cuts sweet. A little bit uphill is best with it. And you can see this is going nice as pie. If I want it to cut deeper, I'm going to swing it towards you. If I want it to cut shallower, I'm going to swing it away from you. Just like that. Grinding jigs have greatly simplified the grinding of all turning tools, but especially gouges. This is become the universal jig amongst turners, and it uses a movable pocket right here with an articulated holder that allows us to grind a tool very easily and very precisely. Moving the pocket back and forth changes the nose grind angle of the gouge. Moving the strut up and down changes the angle of the side grind in relation to the nose grind. This is the 40-40 grind, so named because the cutting edge is raked back at about a 40-degree angle in side view, and the edge is more or less 40 degrees. It is exactly 40 degrees here and about 40 degrees on each side. And about is the key word here. It might be 38 and it might be 42, but it doesn't matter much. A very useful tool for checking all this is an inexpensive protractor to put two 40-degree lines here, and we can fairly easily do a 40-40 grind. And this is, I think, interesting to people who would like to try bowl turning, but they don't particularly want to put a couple $100 into some jigs to do it with. So with just a simple platform that'll get you 40 degrees on the nose like this, drawing up two lines like this, we can now come in like this and roll the gouge as we come around, and then come over here, touch right there like that, and come back like this. I'll do it in real time now. So I've got it parallel to that line. I'm touching here. And I'm going to come right here like that. The 40-40 grind can also be done with the Wolverine jig and the Varigrind holder, although you will have to put the strut at kind of a weird angle to get the side grind right, but there we have 40 on the nose and we have about 40 on the sides. All we have to do is start up the grinder. And just walk it around nice and high. And there we have a 40-40 grind off the Wolverine jig. 40-40 grind, which I've shown you two ways to grind it. And again, if we sight along that nose bevel, it will go right up the side of the bowl. So we have to hold it at about that 40 degrees to this face. The fact that it's swept back 40 degrees also gives you a much longer cutting edge. So when your skills get to the point where you can really make this gouge sing, you can take a much heavier chip. So again, I'm going to come in here with a scrape cut. The flute's pointing to about 9:30, 10 o'clock. There's my start, and once I've got this nose bevel registered, I'm going to rotate it until the cut goes sweet. And again, I'm going to now swing it if I want to go shallow this direction. If I want to go deeper, I'm going to swing it toward you. It'll run with one hand if everything's right. It's a very nice grind. If you're just learning, a good trick is to just hold two fingers on the gouge so you're only holding it down and not pulling it with the left hand. For all the control of this gouge is by getting the nose bevel rubbing. That prevents it from being drawn into the end grain. If we tried to do it this way, it would be a disaster. And so we start the cut, we rotate the tool till it cuts sweetly, and it just goes along. So if you do it with just two fingers like this, you will get nice cuts if you're doing it right, and you will learn to make your dominant hand the control hand. In the 1980s, the Irish guilds, who had a strong local turning guild organization throughout Ireland that was well networked, developed a grind in which the cutting edge or face of the tool was raked back considerably more than 40 degrees. And that has become known as the Irish grind. With the one-way Wolverine system and what they call their Varigrind jig, I simply call it a gooseneck jig, but with that we can very easily grind either a 40-40 grind or this Irish grind. And to do it, we just start up that grinder and just come right around like this. Now we'll take a look at the Irish grind. Again, we're going to take that nose bevel, and that is the direction this wants to cut. So it has to be held about like this. And we want this so that if we put this level on the tool rest, it's at about the center of our bowl. So I'm right there. And again, start the same way, scrape cut, flute pointed to about 9:30, 10 o'clock. If we were making an inside cut, it would be to about 2 to 230. There's a cut strong sweep. A drawback to either the 40/40 grind or the Irish grind is that inside a bowl, as you come down the wall like this, and come around this curve to create the bottom of the bowl, the heel of the bevel will actually drive us off course. As you try to come around here, the bevel will force the tip up and off, and you'll not be able to get the curve that you want in there. So again, in the 1980s sometime, most of us started to take that fresh from the Wolverine jig, and we would simply by eye grind a secondary bevel on here. And you can see that I have, it's lighter here and it comes around and gets bigger here. But I can now, by sort of rounding that corner right there in the heel of the bevel, I can come down the wall of the bowl and around a much tighter curve and across the bottom without being driven up and off our intended course by the heel of the bevel. Now we could go to the same grind, the Irish grind, but with a secondary bevel on it. I won't even put a handle on it, but it cuts just about the same. The first high-speed steel bowl gouge was released to the public in 1976 by the Henry Taylor Company. They built it in collaboration with Roychild. They still make this gouge. This one is of recent manufacture. Cutting theory says that the edge for faceplate work, where you're going against the grain twice a revolution, would be best at about 45 degrees. Let's say between 40 and 45 degrees. And a problem with the normal pocket jig, where we put this essentially in the center of the grinding wheel and roll that, is we'll get a steeper angle at the side no matter what we do. So Johannes Michelson, who is the first guy to think of turning wood hats, has come up with what he calls the vector jig. And we have a plate which has 3 holes center. You can sharpen spindle gouges on this hole. But for bowl gouges, you use the outboard holes here, and you do the right side of the gouge off of that hole, and the left side of the gouge from just beyond the tip over this way with the left hole. And then you come here and you can very handily grind a secondary bevel on the tool, and you can finally come here and grind what Johannes calls a tertiary bevel or third bevel. And that gives you a very nice sweep through here that allows you to go around sharp corners. It's a lovely grind. I've come to pretty much use it exclusively for my gouges. Michelson grind, which gives you closer to 45 degrees, but it's still pretty much an Irish grind, but with a secondary and a tertiary bevel. Very little tear out, which is when you go against the grain here in faceplate work, it's pretty common to damage the grain, either bend it or tear it out. So a good sharp gouge really eliminates that problem. I might also add that a common spindle gouge can be used to turn, but you would not use it like this, or you dig into these and create the rough patch from hell and probably rip the piece off the faceplate. But if we use it thoughtfully, and we can do that by putting this down like this, and again, we have the bevel trailing behind the cut, and you can see I'm getting beautiful shaving, and I'm not taking very much off. I'm just following the contours that I created with the bowl gouge. And I always quip that it's not if you sand, it's how much you sand, but with that little, what I call a trick cut, you pretty much eliminate the need for sanding. You can do the same cut on the inside, but you can only get to about here. You can't come around the corner with it, but that's where all the rough patches happen, is on the inside of the bowl, right down in this area right here. That same cut on the outside can be done with a bowl gouge by, again, raising your rest a little bit and laying this tool down on its side like this, so the bevel rubs, and sort of turn it down until it just starts to cut. And we can now bring that right along. And you can see I'm taking one continuous ribbon of material off of here. It's what I call the trick cut. But again, for a final finishing cut, it is safe as long as that bevel is rubbing behind the cut. But look what I'm rewarded with. Well, I hope this demonstration has helped you to decide on what you want to do. There's a lot more information in the article that is in concert with this video. And so pick up a copy, give it a read, and above all, be safe and have fun.